While the university is commonly understood to be a place where different knowledge systems enter into dialogue and debate, the institutional structures of the university tend to acculturate and conscript different kinds of knowledge into their own existing categories for what can be known, how knowledge can be organized, and what forms of knowledge are legitimate and credible. The Different Knowing speaker series and interviews address the question of if and how the university can be a place of different knowings, different epistemologies, different knowledges.
The last thing I would say is that I think we should be careful about over-fetishizing radical distinctiveness. And it's a hard thing to think about. On the one hand, celebrating difference and distinctiveness. On the other hand, celebrating links, commonalities, right? Common humanity, common sort of experience of the planet, of the cosmos, right? And thinking between those two poles, I think, is quite difficult. And understandably, it's strategic. There are times when, especially for activist purposes, you need to really mobilize radical distinctiveness for certain purposes. Other times, that's not very strategic at all, and you need to mobilize, here's how we're all similar. Here's what we have in common. Here's what we can learn from each other. My fear with something like different knowings would be to hold it up and reify this idea of the radical, that it has to be so different. You go to lots of conferences where people stand up and say, I'm writing this from a native epistemology, I'm using native ways of knowing, I'm using a native methodology. And then you listen to the paper and you think, it sounds like participant observation, gathering data, analyzing the data, presenting findings. That sounds like the Western academic, And then you press people in Q&A, and they often can't point to anything. How is this distinctively native? How is it? But there may be the problem there of just the expectation that it would be so radically different, right? If we believe Foucault, then if we really come into contact with another epistemology, we're not going to understand what people are doing because it's so outside our own organization of knowledge. So that seems like an odd thing to hold up, that we want something so radically different to count. So that would be I think that's just a caution, that we need to be willing to celebrate what people actually do rather than looking for something so radical that it's always going to be a paradigm shift. And it's part of the problem with the way academia works right now, publishing, and that people expect you to have a paradigm shift every time you talk about anything.